Hello guys, welcome back to LR Anime. Today is explanation of Soul Land 2 episode number 72 based on novel. So let's start. This soul beast was green all over, and was hard to see it in the green jungle if one didn't look closely. Furthermore, it was covered by the trees and branches in the 200 meters between them. However, Hua Yuhao's spiritual detection could clearly lock onto its position. Hua Yuhao didn't lock onto all the soul beasts around him after he activated it. However, his spiritual detection could reach a heightened level of precision even at a distance, and he could tell if it was hostile towards them from the soul beast's blood essence, soul power, and spiritual power. They had come across quite a few soul beasts before this, but most of them kept their distance and avoided the group. Some displayed hostility, but they were just trying to intimidate the group, and didn't come near at all. The soul beast before them was different. Once it discovered Hua Yuhao's group, it didn't evade at all, and swiftly came nearer instead. There was a strong aura of hostility and murderous intent around it. There were several typical circumstances with soul beasts like these. First, they could be meeting a belligerent and aggressive soul beast that would attack no matter who its adversaries were. Second, they could encounter a hungry or starving soul beast that had a particular preference for humans. Humans were considered as delicious as meals could get, and these soul beasts would definitely not let go of an opportunity like this. Soul masters were nutritious and extremely beneficial for soul beast. A soul master's tendons, flesh, blood, and veins were perennially nourished by soul power, and the nutrition contained within them was far superior to normal soul beasts. The higher level these soul beasts were, the more interested they would be in high-level soul masters. There were some soul beasts that could directly absorb a soul master's soul power to boost themselves. The last situation was territory. Some relatively stronger soul beasts would mark out their own territories due to their predatory and dietary needs, and these territories were not restricted to soul beast. Humans would definitely be assaulted if they trespassed. After all, soul beasts that could mark their own territories were stronger than most of their kind. The soul beast in front of them belonged to the third situation, as they hadn't encountered any other soul beasts in the minutes before they had discovered this one that looks like a jade ocean spirit ape, and it's probably above 10,000 years in cultivation. Hua Yuhao was the owner of the spiritual detection, and thus immediately reported this soul beast's strength. The jade ocean spirit ape was an ape-type soul beast, and it fed upon the venomous spirit jade fruits. It was a wood-type soul beast, could control plants within a small radius, and was adept with poisonous attacks. It was a soul beast that was hard to deal with. Does anybody need this? Zhong Lushuan asked immediately. Everyone wanted 10,000-year soul rings, while the jade ocean spirit ape was a comparatively rare soul beast. Mo Xian hesitated momentarily before he said, "I'll take it, eldest senior sister. I hope this jade ocean spirit ape is a little stronger. It would be best if it was 20,000 years. Six-ringed soul emperors normally found it challenging to absorb 20,000-year soul rings, but students from Shrek Academy's inner courtyard were definitely not normal. They feasted on nutritious and sumptuous meals provided by the canteen every single day, and their bodies were tough and resilient to an extent that normal soul masters couldn't possibly compare with. Zhong Lushuan smiled and said, "I guess we're lucky that we found something we need so quickly, it's coming." Hua Yuhao instantly reminded her. Zhong Lushuan immediately said, "Yuhao, Wang Donga, and Wang Chua, you guys are up. Capture it alive, Ruoruo, and I will back you up." All three of them were slightly taken aback by Zhong Lushuan's command. 10,000-year soul beasts were a piece of cake for their 8-ringed eldest senior sister, and everyone had assumed she was going to take point. Cai Maya's aura was not far behind everyone, and she subtly nodded her head. Zhong Lushuan could tell that Wang Chua hadn't really gelled with the team, and Zhong Lushuan wanted her to be included as quickly as possible. There were already rumors going around in the academy about Wang Donga and Wang Chua, the two people who shared almost the same name and who looked almost identical. Nobody would know how they were related to each other if they didn't tell. The green shadow was bouncing forward rapidly. It jumped directly from tree to tree, and its green radiance grew stronger with every jump. It covered the 200 meters between them in no time. Everyone could clearly see what this 10,000-year soul beast looked like when it got close. The jade ocean spirit ape was about 1.5 meters tall, and it had an extremely lean and muscular body. Its entire body was covered by green fur, and one could feel that its relatively small frame was filled with strength and power. Its eyes were dark green and ferocious, and two enormous fangs protruded from its lips. The ape's abdominal area swelled continuously as the green light on its body became stronger. Hua Yuhao pulled Wang Donga along and left the formation after Zhong Lushuan's command. Wang Chua followed behind, still maintaining that quiet look. Hua Yuhao still shared his spiritual detection with her no matter what she was like. He had encountered many 10,000-year soul beasts before, so he naturally wasn't nervous at all. A dash of orange-gold light flew from his body, and the tiny snow lady was already in midair. Wang Chua was momentarily stunned when she saw the little snow lady, and her footsteps became even slower than before. She was even more out of rhythm with the pair in front of her. Hua Yuhao had already made his move. A purple-gold light immediately erupted from his eyes and flickered once before the Jade Ocean Spirit Ape that was still bounding forward howled agonizingly, and large swathes of green fog started to pour from its body. Watch out, that's its spirit jade poison fog, Zhong Lushuan reminded everyone. Hua Yuhao naturally knew that this was spirit jade poison fog, and he had already prepared to react. His spiritual shock had been fired off precisely. Otherwise, that poisonous fog wouldn't have been coming toward them from a distance, it would have instead spurted directly on top of them. The ape's soul skill was interrupted, and it broke the branch it was hopping on and plummeted from the trees. However, 10,000-year soul beasts were not that easy to handle, and it recovered a little even as it fell to the ground. It roared into the sky, and opened its mouth once more as another stream of green fog fired out, blowing the denser poison fog from before towards the Shrek students. However, a dark blue light resembling a sprawling arch now struck out with lightning speed. The green fog immediately turned into ice and dissipated wherever this light touched, frozen in that very moment, and every piece fluttered to the ground. The fog itself was made from very tiny particles, and it contained smoke, mist, and water vapor. No matter how strong the spirit ape's poison element was, the venomous air that its body generated would naturally carry some water particles, and this meant the fog was ultimately more like mist. The tiny snow lady's tiny hand pointed forward. That was the ultimate ice light beam, and all the water that this light touched instantly became ice crystals. The venomous fog broke apart by itself, and was dispelled by the extreme chill. The ape evaded the beam of light in a flash, but its ferocious eyes became a little doubtful and unsettled. The temperature around it was starting to plummet, while its poisonous fog was dispelled in an instant. This made the soul beast, which had a certain level of intelligence, a little afraid. Describing the process was slow, but everything happened in a single instant. Hua Yuhao and Wang Donga darted forward the moment the snow lady fired the beam, and the two of them surged into the sky. The golden light in Hua Yuhao's eyes flickered once more as his fourth soul ring sparkled, and a pale golden whirlpool instantly appeared above the spirit ape's head. This 10,000-year soul beast's spiritual cultivation wasn't weak, but it was far inferior to Hua Yuhao. Spiritual confusion immediately took effect on the spirit ape, and the dazed and confused soul beast immediately used the same attack. Hua Yuhao was holding on to Wang Donga with his right hand, but he released her hand as they raced forward. Wang Donga telepathically understood his intentions as she grabbed his arm and shifted behind his back before she grabbed his shoulders. The radiant butterfly goddess wings extended outward, and the brilliant light of the butterfly goddess burst toward the Jade Ocean spirit ape. This was only Wang Donga's second soul skill, but it was both completely charged with the power of light and amplified by her golden light left arm bone at the same time. The spirit ape was still struck by Hua Yuhao's spiritual confusion, so it couldn't even evade those golden spheres. It was battered until it began to chitter, and streak after streak of fire ignited on the ground. All the venomous particles that had drifted to the ground before were cleansed by the light. However, the Jade Ocean spirit ape had to be relatively formidable for it to reign supreme in its territory inside the hybrid region. Its green fur radiated with pale colors as most of the attacks that hammered into its body were dispelled. It was continually forced backward from the onslaught, but it hadn't really been wounded yet. The spirit ape howled furiously as the green light on its body immediately became stronger. Hua Yuhao and Wang Donga were 10 meters away from it at this point, and Wang Donga's wings spread apart and beat heavily as she lifted Hua Yuhao back into the sky. The dense vegetation on the ground began to radiate with powerful green light, with the spirit ape at the center. Green light waves that resembled sharp swords moved outward and shot more than 5 meters high. They covered almost 30 meters in diameter around the ape. Wang Chua was originally following behind Hua Yuhao and Wang Donga. She paused in her tracks when the ape suddenly exploded with light, then took a small step forward with her left leg to plant herself stably before punching out with her right fist. Her right fist became completely golden when she punched forward, and a deep dragon roar could be heard that caused all the trees around her to tremble. The green waves that were pushing forward split open in two as they hit the golden luster, and not a single one struck Wang Chua. Right when she punched out, the Jade Ocean spirit ape in the distance suddenly quivered vigorously. It had finally recovered from Hua Yuhao's spiritual confusion, and it turned to flee without hesitation. The dense vegetation that had previously burst with surging green light all wilted, as if their vitality had been sucked away. Right when the Jade Ocean spirit ape was turning to run, a golden patch of light suddenly glowed on the ground in front of it. The golden radiance wasn't that brilliant, but it was filled with the gentle power of light. There was another golden hexagram on the ground, but it wasn't very conspicuous, as it was covered by all the vegetation. However, it was quite large, with a diameter of around 3 meters, so it extended horizontally across quite a large area. The spirit ape was escaping in a panic. Even though it saw the golden hexagram, it didn't feel any threat from it, so it leapt forward in an attempt to jump right over it. However, just as it was in midair, the hexagram was triggered. A similar golden pillar surged into the sky and completely enveloped the Jade Ocean spirit ape. The spirit ape was propelled at least 3 meters into the air by this pillar of light. The intense golden light fixed it in place in the air and completely immobilized it, while scorching golden flames incinerated its body. The ape howled painfully and desperately as it struggled as hard as it could, and layer after layer of green soul power undulations flowed from its body. Wang Dong's black fourth soul ring was glowing. This was her fourth soul skill, hexagram array. The hexagram array was remarkably powerful. Anything that it struck would immediately be trapped by the power of light contained within, and would have to withstand intense searing fire from the pillar of light. The only way to resist the fire was to continually release soul power, as one couldn't use any soul skills at all once struck by the hexagram array. All one could do was release soul power to fight against it. This would naturally consume a lot of soul power, and the duration was closely related to the target's cultivation. However, if the target's cultivation was within 2 ranks, the shortest duration of the trap would still be at least 3 seconds. This was a powerful offensive soul skill and a formidable controlling soul skill at the same time. It trapped and hurt the opponent, and it greatly consumed the opponent's soul power, truly a forceful and well-rounded soul skill. Of course, this soul skill naturally had its weaknesses amidst all of its strengths. There could only be one active hexagram array at any one point in time, and the array had a 1-second delay to take effect after it had been unleashed. The target also had to cross over it for it to take effect. The limitations rendered this powerful soul skill not so excessively terrifying. The Jade Ocean Spirit Ape obviously didn't know that the seemingly unthreatening hexagram array would be this potent, or that it would have to fight for dear life inside Wang Dong's fourth soul skill. Hua Yuhao and Wang Donga had already descended again from the sky, and he had already swapped positions with Wang Donga in midair. Wang Donga's bluish-golden wings became completely golden, and plunged from the sky like 2 giant scythes. Her wings crossed one another continuously as they slashed the immobilized spirit ape, and it was hurled into the sky once more as it howled in excruciating pain. The original hexagram array instantly vanished, and another hexagram array glowed in the spot where the spirit ape would land after it was hurtled away. The 1 second that the hexagram array required had already passed when the spirit ape crashed heavily to the ground. It was thrown into the air once more, and torched by the fire of light yet again. Wang Donga had rarely launched attacks ever since she reunited with Hua Yuhao, but that didn't mean she wasn't powerful enough. It simply meant she gave Hua Yuhao more chances to perform. She was willing to be the woman behind his limelight, while the reason why she took the initiative this time was to put on a display for a certain someone. The 2 hexagram arrays that came one after another, in addition to the mighty slashing wing blades boosted by her golden light left arm bone, severely wounded the Jade Ocean Spirit Ape. The green light that the ape released while it was being scorched within the hexagram array was a lot dimmer than before, and 2 huge gashes crossed both of its shoulders. Wang Donga exclaimed as she extended her wings, and she bounced off Hua Yuhao's palms, which were stretched out to give her a boost. She flew about 6 or 7 meters into the sky, and searing bluish-golden flames lit up on her. In the next moment, her 5th soul ring began to glow and she phased into an elegant and graceful bluish-golden butterfly for a single instant. The area for several hundred meters all around her was painted with bluish-gold hues when she unleashed her attack, as if there were countless bluish-gold butterflies flickering in the sky. Wang Donga had already finished her soul skill even as everyone saw a blinding flash. This was clearly a shock-type offensive soul skill, but Wang Donga was simply too fast. The bluish-gold light only seemed to flash once, and she was behind the spirit ape in the next moment. The hexagram array's light was instantly withdrawn as the Jade Ocean Spirit Ape plummeted from the sky. It was still trembling vigorously, and everyone could clearly see that it had multiple bluish-golden light patterns plastered all over its body. Or, one could describe them as wounds. Quickly, Mo Xian, Zhong Lushuan shouted. Mo Xian wouldn't let an opportunity like this slip away. He darted out with a flash, and arrived before the Jade Ocean Spirit Ape as Zhong Lushuan followed behind him and gave it a final blow. The Spirit Ape's life force was reaching its end, and it felt as if the power of light was forcibly maintaining its last breath. Butterfly Goddess Meteor, Wang Donga's fearsome 5th soul skill. Its offensive power was so strong that even Cai Maya, who was watching the battle from the side, reacted in shock. The air was filled with the smell of sunshine that was created after everything was incinerated by the fiery light. A black soul ring rose from the Jade Ocean Spirit Ape's body, and Mo Xian immediately sat down cross-legged beside it without hesitation. He began to absorb the soul ring with the guidance of his soul power. Everyone naturally surrounded him for protection. Zhong Lushuan turned to look at Hua Yuhao and Wang Donga, and then at Wang Chua, who had done nothing at all except punching out with that one fist. She frowned delicately and said, "I'll have to criticize you first, Yuhao. You're the main control-type soul master. How did you lead your companions? Why didn't Wang Chua truly participate in the battle from beginning to end? While it's true that you and Wang Donga were enough to defeat this Jade Ocean Spirit Ape, wouldn't Chua's participation have made it a lot easier, and you would have expended a lot less soul power?" Wang Donga didn't even wait for Hua Yuhao to respond. She exclaimed unhappily, "We don't know what she can do, and neither do we know what soul skills she possesses or how powerful she is. What if she drags us down when we delegate something to her and ask her to cooperate? Furthermore, we are also concerned about her safety. Zhong Lushuan's expression grew dark. Do you know what being on a team means, Wang Donga? If everyone on the team shares your opinion, then the team will crumble sooner or later. You're also from the inner courtyard, and you're Elder Mu's disciple. Don't you understand simple reason? Our fight has only just begun, and what we need right now is mutual cooperation and understanding. I don't care about what problems you have with Wang Chua, but you can't act on them on this expedition, as everyone's safety is concerned. From now on, you will temporarily stop your coordination with Hua Yuhao. You will stand guard at the back. Light flashed across Wang Donga's eyes, and she wanted to continue arguing, but Hua Yuhao held her back. Hua Yuhao muttered softly, eldest senior sister is right. We are a team, and we are one body. It's my fault, eldest senior sister. Wang Donga also calmed down at this moment. She knew that Zhong Lushuan was right, but she said nothing more even though she still felt a little aggrieved and unconvinced. Zhong Lushuan's eyes turned towards Wang Chua, and her voice was clearly harsher. What about you, Wang Chua? What did you do? Why didn't you take the initiative to cooperate? It's understandable why you fell behind in the beginning, but you could have caught up when Wang Donga released the first hexagram array. Why did you stop? The three of you are working together. Do you even have a single inkling of cooperation? You were cowering at the back as you watched your comrades fight. Are you even worthy of becoming part of Shrek Academy's inner courtyard? Wang Chua shot her a glare and said coldly, you are not qualified to decide whether I'm part of the inner courtyard or not. Why do I have to fight if the two of them are enough? It would even have been enough if I had been by myself. Furthermore, I have never cowered in the face of an adversary. If you don't believe that, we can switch positions, and I'll take point. Eldest senior sister's awe-inspiring aura had been challenged, and the other inner courtyard students were stunned as they looked on, slack-jawed. They had never ever seen anyone talk back to Zhong Lushuan like that. Zhong Lushuan smiled plainly and said, I'm sorry, but I am actually qualified to decide whether you're part of Shrek Academy's inner courtyard. I'm part of Shrek Academy's Sea Gods Pavilion, and I have the right to ask to the Academy to expel any member from the inner courtyard. What you have done violates school rules, so nobody will protect you. If you are unconvinced about my ability, you can challenge me after the expedition. But I am the team leader for now, and I will give you one last chance. Answer me, are you willing to follow my orders and cooperate with the team? Wang Chua's eyes turned cold as she listened to Zhong Lushuan, as if she were about to explode. Everyone else was looking at her. Nobody expected that Wang Chua, who was still new, would dare to antagonize their eldest senior sister, who was the team leader. This was the Great Star Do Forest's inner region, and Zhong Lushuan's actions were indisputable. She had to ensure that the team had only one voice, and that everyone would listen to her commands and her delegations. That was the only way for her to ensure everyone's safety. The light in Wang Chua's eyes receded, and she answered plainly, all right, as you wish. I will listen to your orders. Zhong Lushuan didn't look proud at all, and she muttered solemnly, you've made the right choice. The reason is because this doesn't just concern your own safety. The entire team's safety is at stake. I hope you won't do anything foolish in our subsequent ventures. From now on, you will be cooperating with Hua Yuhao. She returned to the formation after speaking these words, and the initial tension and instability was instantly resolved by her timely handling of the situation. She had temporarily severed Hua Yuhao and Wang Donga's partnership and paired Hua Yuhao with Wang Chua. This move had a deeper meaning, and she wanted to break the ice and the barriers between the two of them through battle and helping each other out. They had just entered the hybrid region, and were still far from actual danger. It was better to resolve these issues right now than when the real problems came around, and she targeted both parties at the same time so nobody would feel aggrieved or wronged. Wang Donga took a few steps back reluctantly. She followed behind Hua Yuhao, but was still quite near. Wang Chua was perhaps deliberately trying to upset her as she walked up to Wang Donga's original spot. She was standing extremely close to Hua Yuhao, except she wasn't holding hands with him. Wang Donga nudged Hua Yuhao from behind, and Hua Yuhao hurriedly waved his hands behind her and clasped her hands once to tell her to relax and not to worry. Wang Donga was still a little reluctant, but she had to get used to it, as she couldn't just ignore Zhong Lushuan's orders. Wang Chua was still quiet like she had always been. She was just standing there and staring into the distance, and her large blue eyes looked a little empty. Nobody knew what she was thinking about. Hua Yuhao was also contemplating something. He was thinking about Wang Chua's punch from before. He had been engaged in battle, but he was still observing and monitoring the entire battlefield through his spiritual detection. Wang Chua's punch had looked as simple as a punch could be, but the power that had erupted in that moment had astonished Hua Yuhao. There was a hint of unrivaled power and prestige within that punch. It was accompanied by that deep dragon's roar, which had momentarily dazed Hua Yuhao while he was monitoring the battlefield. Furthermore, Wang Chua's punch was only intended to protect herself, and she didn't attack the Jade Ocean Spirit Ape directly. The truth was that her punch had quite an effect, as Hu Yuhao could clearly feel the intense fear that rose from the ape, and the ape fled into the trap that he and Wang Donga had set up immediately afterwards. Pure strength could actually reach a level such as this. Furthermore, Wang Chua's spiritual power had to be quite formidable as well. At least, her ability to fuse spiritual power and soul power was definitely equal to his own, if not better. This was the judgment that Hu Yuhao had made about her in this short period of time. However, Wang Chua only made that one attack, and he didn't have enough information to make even more deductions. He was becoming increasingly interested in this golden dragon martial soul. This Jade Ocean Spirit Ape was only around 15,000 years old, so Mo Xian didn't have too much difficulty absorbing it. An hour passed before he finally finished absorbing his sixth soul ring, and he leapt to his feet happily. "Thank you." Mo Xian walked to Hu Yuhao, Wang Donga, and Wang Chua and thanked them with a grateful look. Wang Donga and Wang Chua remained silent as Hu Yuhao replied, "You're welcome. We're a team anyway, it's good that it was suitable for you." Mo Xian glanced at him and then at the masked beauties beside him. His face suddenly had an added drop of amusement as he said, "Good luck, brother." Hu Yuhao could obviously see the teasing and mocking expression in his eyes, and he suddenly felt a little embarrassed. At this point, Zhong Lushuan called everyone up to keep moving. Everyone became more vigilant after their encounter with the Jade Ocean Spirit Ape. However, they didn't feel much pressure with Hu Yuhao's spiritual detection. They fought back or chased away several unsuitable soul beasts as they moved forward, and ventured deeper and deeper into the hybrid region. Hu Yuhao could tell from the distance they had traveled that the area they were in had surpassed his previous expeditions into the Great Stardow Forest. He felt both nervous and excited at the same time, as every soul master wanted to see the Great Stardow Forest's mysterious slaughter ground. Moving inward from the hybrid region would take them into the core region, and the slaughter grounds were at the center of the core region. They were traveling closer and closer to that area. The forest's peripheral region and hybrid regions had the largest surface area of the four main regions. The core region was comparatively smaller, but the soul beasts residing within the core region naturally had incredibly frightening abilities. How could any soul beast enter and live within the core region without some ability? The Great Stardow Forest's layout, where the inner regions were more dangerous while the weaker soul beasts resided in the outer regions, was logical. Hu Yuhao could feel the life energy in the air becoming increasingly dense as they moved further in, something beneficial for any living being. He could only imagine that the slaughter grounds at the core region's center was probably a paradise, and it was probably the best place for soul beasts to cultivate. The sky had gone dark by now, and it was night time. Roars and howls could be heard from time to time, along with a cacophony of bird calls and insect chirps in the area all around them. Zhong Lushuan paused and took a look at the sky through the canopy. She lowered her voice and said, "We should be inside the core region's central areas. It's not good to move during the night, so we shall rest here today. Hu Yuhao, can you expand your detection area so that we can find a suitable place to make camp all right?" Hu Yuhao raised his spiritual power and swiftly expanded his spiritual detection. The radius reached 1,000 meters in an instant, but he stopped at this distance, as expanding it further would require his Eye of Destiny. Zhong Lushuan pointed in one direction after a moment, and led everyone there. It was a place that was relatively higher than the area around it, with dense vegetation and tall trees surrounding it. Li Yongyu released his martial soul. A moonblade shaped like a beautiful crescent and flickering with a chilly light appeared, and it swept around as it unleashed several blade rays that cleared away all the undergrowth around this area. Just like Zhong Lushuan had said during their picnic before this, they would have to take shelter in the open air as they traveled into the Great Stardow Forest's inner regions. This place would be their camp tonight. Sleeping in tents was an impossibility, as they had to be ready for any changes or unforeseen circumstances. Zhong Lushuan glanced around and surveyed her surroundings via Hu Yuhao's spiritual detection before she lowered her voice and said, "There are many soul beasts in the area. However, I could sense during our journey here that there are hardly any powerful soul beasts that have claimed this area as part of their territory. Thanks to Hu Yuhao's spiritual detection, our progress today has been swift, and we have reached such a deep position after just 8 hours. We will encounter a lot more trouble from tomorrow onwards, and our forward movement will be much slower. We will have sentries tonight, and everyone will rotate shifts. Those who are resting will meditate where they are. I'll take first watch, and Ruoruo will go next. Everyone will keep watch for 2 hours. Hu Yuhao and Wang Chua will take the third shift. Wang Donga, Li Yongyu, and Mo Xian are not suitable for keeping watch, so the 3 of you will relax and rest." Even though Wang Donga didn't feel comfortable about not keeping watch with Hu Yuhao throughout the night, she didn't raise any objections. Her abilities were not suitable for keeping a stealthy watch during the night. The radiant butterfly goddess was too brilliant, too obvious, and she would easily attract soul beasts in the area. She would probably bring great trouble to everyone if she attracted a lot of soul beasts to where their camp was located. Wang Chua glanced at Hu Yuhao, and realized that Hu Yuhao was also staring at her as their gazes met. Wang Chua snapped her head away, and Hu Yuhao was slightly taken aback as he realized that Wang Chua's eyes were a little different from before. They seemed a little more amiable than they were during the day. They absolutely couldn't start a fire inside the Great Stardo Forest. Soul beasts were not like typical wild beasts, and there were many soul beasts that had a strong preference for flames and fire. Therefore, enjoying a meal along the way was as normal as it could get. Everybody was feeling fortunate about having had a nice meal at lunchtime. Even though they were quite exhausted from their journey, everyone at least had sufficient psychological comfort and satisfaction. They munched on some simple dry rations and drank a few mouthfuls from their water bottles before everyone sat down in their respective spots and began to cultivate. Hu Yuhao and Wang Donga were different from the rest. They sat facing each other with their palms raised and in contact as they began to circulate their Haodong power. They were deliberately suppressing it, but their bodies were still shining with pale light. This couldn't be helped, as soul power circulation during cultivation would always release light to a certain extent. Zhong Lashuan was still standing there as she gazed into the horizon. She no longer had Hu Yuhao's spiritual detection to support her, so she could only rely on her own abilities to stand guard for now. Wang Chua sat in a spot not far from Hu Yuhao and Wang Donga, and her alluring eyes showed thoughtfulness as she watched them with their palms together. Everyone was part of the inner courtyard, and they were all extremely qualified and outstanding. They quickly entered meditation even though they were in a perilous area, and not a single one of them couldn't adapt. They swiftly recovered their soul power, and their fatigue was also eased in the process. They would probably need about 2 hours to return to their peak condition, but they took a longer time to rest to recover from physical fatigue and mental exhaustion, so that everyone would be in an even better state. 2 hours quickly passed. Han Ruoruo rose when the time was up and took over Zhong Lashuan's shift. Zhong Lashuan's arrangements left no room for dispute, and everyone had no choice but to obey. The whole night would be about 10 hours long. She took the first 2 hours, Han Ruoruo took the next 2, while Hu Yuhao and Wang Chua would stand guard for the next 2 hours. The last 4 hours would definitely still fall to her and Han Ruoruo, which was equivalent to the 2 team leaders bearing most of the responsibility to stand guard for the night. The forest appeared tranquil and undisturbed. It was as if they were blessed by the heavens, and 4 hours passed without encountering any soul beasts passing by. Hu Yuhao woke up when his time came. He withdrew his hands that were still pressed against Wang Donga's hands, and Wang Donga opened her eyes at the same time, before sticking out her tongue. She glanced at Wang Chua not far from their position as she gestured at Hu Yuhao to be careful. Hu Yuhao gave her a thumbs up to show that he had no problems, and then he stood up and walked over to Wang Chua. "All right. Hurry and rest, senior sister," Hu Yuhao answered politely, while Wang Chua didn't respond at all. The two of them stood shoulder to shoulder, and Wang Chua was still as cold as she had always been. However, she actually removed her veil at this moment for some reason. The forest night wasn't an absolute darkness where one couldn't see anything at all. Moonlight cascaded through the canopy and showered onto the forest through the shadows of the trees, and there were some tiny insects around that gave off light as well. The light was weak, but they could still see. Hu Yuhao looked at her profile when he turned towards Wang Chua. It was just so familiar and beautiful. If he hadn't known better, he wouldn't have been able to tell whether the person beside him was Wang Chua or Wang Donga. "She's so pretty," Hu Yuhao exclaimed in admiration inside, before he hurriedly turned back around and activated his spiritual detection before he shared it with her. Wang Chua glanced in his direction and muttered, "Your soul skill is good." She had a charming voice, but it still sounded a little cold and forced no matter how one heard it. Hu Yuhao retrieved some dry rations and asked, "Do you want some?" The rations he took out were meat sandwiches he had prepared earlier. Baked bread was food that didn't spoil easily, and there was some meat packed inside. It was a little dry, but it still tasted all right. Hu Yuhao was just being courteous and polite, but he didn't think that Wang Chua would ask, "Did you make that yourself?" Hu Yuhao nodded and replied, "Donga is a little picky with her food. I made some braised meat before this, and the baked bread was taken from the canteen. It tastes all right." Wang Chua glanced at him and said, "You're really good to her." Hu Yuhao smiled and gestured towards her with the meat sandwich in his hands. Wang Chua took 2 pieces from him. Hu Yuhao realized to his surprise that her hands were covered with a faint golden aura. That layer was dark golden in color, and it was surprisingly inconspicuous in the darkness of the night. She passed the sandwiches back in the next moment. "Hand me another 2, Wang Chua said plainly. Hu Yuhao took the 2 sandwiches back suspiciously, but he had a revelation once he held them in his hands. The 2 sandwiches were now warm, and they carried delicate wafts of cooking meat. Her soul power can even be used for grilling? Hu Yuhao hurriedly passed her another 2 sandwiches, while he took a bite from the one already in his hands. Hu Yuhao was rendered speechless by her question. The truth was that he could also feel the hostility that Wang Donga harbored against Wang Chua. He forced a laugh and said, "The truth is that I don't understand it, either. The 2 of you look too similar, and Donga insists that she doesn't have a twin sister." Perhaps that's why she's suspicious of you. I trust that time will serve to prove everything. There was a look of profoundness in his eyes when he uttered this last sentence. Wang Chua turned back around and continued eating the sandwich in her hands. She said coldly, I have never had to prove anything to anyone. Huo Yuhao had already finished the food in his hands by now. He retrieved his water bag and took a few gulps as he smiled and said, that's not a good attitude. First, we live in the same world, and you can't possibly reject and forsake everything in the world. You can't decide how people look at you. Since that's the case, why don't you try to fit in? Will being so reticent and aloof bring you happiness? Fit in? Do you really think I can fit in? Ever since I left home, everyone outside has been attracted by my looks. Do you know how many people come forward to flirt with me in a single day? I've even met some people who would do anything to get to me. I do want to fit in, but the process of fitting in will have to rely on my fists. That is the reason I wear the veil, and it has alleviated much of my troubles. Huo Yuhao said exasperatedly, that's because you're too good-looking. Perhaps this is the negative effect of being so blessed with beauty by the heavens. However, I can guarantee that you won't run into such problems within Shrek Academy. Wang Chua muttered disdainfully, you can only speak for yourself. She suddenly tossed the baked bread in her hands as she said, it's disgusting. I'm not eating that anymore. Huo Yuhao was momentarily stunned, before his eyes suddenly became ice-cold in the next moment. Wang Chua felt a slight chill, and turned around subconsciously to look at him. She met Huo Yuhao's eyes, and his eyes flickered with chilly light as she felt a tidal wave of animosity. However, this hostility didn't continue, and the coldness receded. Huo Yuhao walked over to where she threw the baked bread as he bent down and picked it up. Do you want to fight? Wang Chua raised her chin and stared at Huo Yuhao provocatively. Huo Yuhao shot a cold look at her. I would have if we were elsewhere. Have your family never taught you to treasure your food? Do you know that a small piece of baked bread like this can save a life? Wang Chua twitched her lips contemptuously. Huo Yuhao continued, have you ever felt hunger? Wang Chua answered coldly, powerful people will never feel hungry. Huo Yuhao turned his head around. He didn't want to see the coldness and disdain on her face as he gazed into the darkness and said, yes, it's just a piece of baked bread. However, a piece of baked bread like this means the opportunity to continue surviving to me. He held onto the baked bread that was just thrown onto the ground as he spoke, and he actually bit down on the bread that Wang Chua had just eaten from and began to chew. Wang Chua was still upset, and she was still wearing that look of contempt, but she was dazed when she saw his actions. His eating the baked bread that I've just eaten from. That was the only thought running through her head. And Huo Yuhao? Huo Yuhao's mind was only filled with precious memories. I was only 5 years old back then, and I was still a skinny little kid. My mother and I had to live under someone else's roof, and my mother would feed me every day with her meager salary. My mother still had to wash clothes outside even in the bitter chill of winter, and her hands were covered by wounds and scars. My mother loved me so much. She always told me that I was the only thing that mattered in her life. I still remember that day. The sky had turned dark, and my mother came running in elatedly from outside. It was hard to see her smile through all the excruciating toil of her daily life, but she was just so happy that day. Do you know why? He turned back around and stared into Wang Chua's eyes. At this moment, tears had already welled up in his eyes. He took another bite from the piece of baked bread. He munched and chewed vigorously, and his tears trickled down his cheeks uncontrollably. Why? The cold expression on Wang Chua's face had vanished. She was at a loss. This video will end here. Thank you for watching.